All right, it is 6 p.m. So let's get this show rolling. Welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Select Board meeting. It is the 24th of February and it was still light out when I was driving here. Robin, would you care to read the quote of the evening before we get going?
Sure. The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. Albert Einstein.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. Seeing nobody rushing to the podium, let's move along to the administrator's report.
We are out to bid with the project on Youngtown Road, the Hardy Brook Crossing. Well, get all our permits, got the things done, and it's out the door. Bid award hopefully in the latter part of March for spring or summer construction. Outside of the budget and what you have on the agenda, that's all.
Okay, any questions?
Oh, I take that back. And we put up some additional winter sand building because we've used almost all we had in the building.
All righty. Any questions for David? All right, seeing none, let's move along to the upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here in the town office unless announced otherwise. The Lakes and Ponds Committee meets Tuesday, February 25th, 7 p.m. The planning board is scheduled to meet Wednesday, February 26th, 6 p.m. Lincolnville Central School Committee is meeting Monday, March 3rd, 6 p.m. at the Lincolnville Central School. Select Board is going to have an executive session on Monday, March 3rd, 6 p.m. here at the town office. And the Select Board meets next in regular session on Monday, March 10th, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share?
Land use committee would tell me that we'd like to be on March 10th before the fucking.
Got that land use committee wants to add a meeting March
Yep.
10th before we meet. So 5?
4.
4. Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no upcoming community events, we have our meeting minutes. We have 3 sets of meeting minutes, the second set being our split budget presentations. Can I have a motion, please?
I move the board approve the February 10th, 2025 meeting as presented. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And the second set, please.
I move that the board approve the February 11th and February 15th, 2025 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
One, I think you said 15th, it's 13th.
Yeah, I think it is 13. It's
I wish to
15
amend.
was Friday, right?
I wish to amend my motion.
Okay, 11th and 13th.
11th to reflect the 11th and the 13th.
Second. Sorry.
So amended, moved, seconded, further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And the final set, please.
I move that the board approve the February 17th, 2025 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? None, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And moving rapidly along, we have an update from our financial advisory.
How are we doing this year?
Well,
Another year, here I am. So, first of all, thank you for having me, for another year. And, 3 things I just want to hit on, update, annual update. First of all, since we haven't received any audited financial statements for the last 2 fiscal years, with my understanding, I don't have any hard numbers with respect to the unassigned reserves are that are been audited. So, I'll just speak generally on that. First of all, typically our basic policy from the town is that we cover 25% of our annual expenses should be held in reserve in case we have some type of emergency. Over the last since 2022 fiscal year, I think our expenditures have been between $9.5 and $10 million a year. So that translates to about a $2.5 million reserve per town policy, which at this point in time, we have a little bit over 4 million, so it's clearly covering, what our goals were with respect to reserve, at least unless there's been some type of catastrophic number change that I'm not aware of, which I don't believe I am. So that's the first thing. Second of all, for the past, you have a report from the investment advisor. And essentially, just to kind of give you a summary, as far as allocation of the resources of the reserve, for the last year, it was about 28% in equity investments and 72% in fixed income and cash investments, which has been what our basic policy has been up until today. I think our basic policy was that we would allocate 75% into fixed income and cash and 25% into equity. Obviously, if investments do well, they're gonna overshoot the allocation by some percentage. And then periodically, the investment advisor rebalances back down. So just to give you a sense where we are today, at least at the end of the year. Performance of the investment advisor has been solid this year. Essentially, for the year, I think we had a 7% return on our investments, which is very good. Over the last 3, 5, and 7 year period, we've been generating, as you see in the report, a little bit over 2% for the last 3 years, which included one big major down year. So that really pulled the averages down the last couple of years. I think last year we had an 8% plus return. Over the life of the investment, we've been earning about 4%, and that was primarily in that long period where we had almost 0 interest rates or low interest rates. So generating 4% with the conservative allocation that we had was above the inflation rate with a little bit extra. So that was solid, and the performance basically matched the benchmarks that we've established for performance for that portfolio, given that allocation. So the investment manager is doing a solid job. And so we, as Financial Advisory Committee, don't have any concern that we might want to change the investment manager at this time. So that's another, observation. Performances overall for all asset classes this year were down slightly from last year, primarily because interest rates have dropped a little bit from last year, but still we're getting 5.3% on our cash, which is about 8% of the portfolio, getting about 4.3% on our fixed income, which is 58% of our portfolio, and then we're getting about 14.6% on our equity performance, which is 26% of the portfolio, which is down slightly from 16%. But we're diversified across all sorts of equity index allocations. So, we're not concentrated in any one particular index. For example, the S&P 500, which is heavily concentrated, or is beginning to become more concentrated in tech. So we're not overly exposed in any we don't have concentration risk, I believe, in our portfolio. Plus, we only have 28% right now in our equity portfolio. So, in the theory that if the market had a downturn, we would obviously, because we have equity exposure, would, have a downturn in our performance, but on the overall allocation of things, I think we'd be fine, at least in my view. But overall, in the long term, as we know, in the meeting that we talked about, we had our special meeting relating to the investment policy earlier. In the long run, we believe that if we have a modest change in investment policy with a modest allocation towards equity investments in the form of index funds or some other type of diversified portfolio that we would do better. And it would be a prudent thing to do since long-term, we're trying to, for the long-term economic health of the town's finances. So, so that was, so I think changing downward in case of people getting worried about, market exposure. In the long run, in the longer run for the town, probably it's very difficult to time these things. So why would we want to do that? So that was just, another thing that I just wanted to bring up to the board. As far as investment policy, as you know, we met and we discussed coming back to the board with a revised, updated policy that reflected the current view that perhaps we should be a little bit more equity oriented in our investment allocations. And the Financial Advisory Committee met, we discussed it, we looked at a draft, we've made a few changes, and what we have in front of you at this point is what our proposed policy would be, which is an update. The last time it was updated was 2002. So I remember that. So it's been a while. And so we updated the policy with updated language. And at this point, we try to give the investment advisor the ability to have some level of judgment and flexibility with some guardrails, as we discussed in our meeting. And as a result of that, we basically propose that the allocation be revised to the 50-50 allocation between fixed on cash and equities. So that was what we had put together as far as a proposed policy. And if the board accepts that policy, then we would go back to the investment manager, and over the next 4 to 6 months, he would go and start to move towards that allocation. He's not going to do it as soon as he gets the light switch on, so to speak, but he'll do it over a 4 to 6 months using his judgment. And that's how that would work. So that's where we are today.
Great. Questions for Linwood? No. Thank you so much.
Do we have policy recommendation for the policy, or are you gonna vote on that, or should we get approval on that?
Yeah, I think that'll be our next piece of business. Yeah, tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so that way we get some direction to the.
Yeah, exactly. We, for the not so minor, but minor reasons of updating from selectmen to select board.
Right.
So there's
Right,
those
just
elements.
language changes.
Precisely, but then the other thoughtful inclusions that that are in the
Yeah, I
updated
mean,
draft. Yep.
as soon as you give us direction, we will give him the direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there are no questions, I can release you from the hot seat, and then I'd ask the board for a motion regarding the investment policy and guidelines.
I move that the board adopt the updated investment policy and guidelines as recommended by the Financial Advisory Committee dated February 5th, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much, and thank you for your thoughtful input as always. There's nothing else on that. We'll move rapidly along to an update from the Land Use Committee, who just had a meeting,
We
right?
just had our meeting.
Thanks, Linwood.
I think our last update might have been August.
Yep.
Right now, what we've been fine tuning everything that we've done. We had a public hearing in October. And then we had a joint meeting with the planning board. We forwarded them the draft, everything we've been working on, the number of recommendations that came out of that. We've been trying to incorporate everything we heard from the public hearing and from the select board. There's some disagreement, I think, between us and the select board, planning board, on some of the changes, minor stuff that I think our next sit down, we'll probably be able to kind of hash those all out. I think we've probably gone into it a little bit more than the planning board. Planning board seemed to think that we were going to, but as a committee, there was a number of items that we felt it really came from the moratorium and listening to everybody what they wanted. Our schedule currently, we are hoping to approve our rough draft on March 10th. We'd be looking to schedule a meeting with the planning board for April. And then I guess the next question is when the public hearing will be, whether it has to go up to legal first before the public hearing, or we take it to the public hearing and then legal tackles that. I guess you guys are gonna have to answer that for us, I guess. But I think we probably will have to have a meeting. I can't imagine everything is gonna be perfect going through it with the planning board. There may still be a couple of rough changes that, hopefully could be done by the end of April. Especially if we aim for early April to meet with the planning board. If we throw another meeting in there. We would have something to give to the town. So, David, I don't know the process, if public hearing comes before, the public hearing has to be on the actual wording, correct? Or,
It should be, yes, it should be. In an ideal perfect world, it'd be exactly what's gonna be presented to the voters. But somebody always comes in at the 11th hour with a comma or a period or a tweak or maybe even a major rewrite. I would definitely encourage the board to have it reviewed for legalese before the public hearing, so that we don't get people's hopes up or down by saying, oh, this is great.
yeah. So not having done this before, I don't
Yep.
know if that's a 5-month process with the lawyers or a 5-day process with the lawyers, so.
Somewhere in between, depending on
Yeah.
how voluminous your document turns out to be.
Yeah, so I would say that by May, this can be turned over to. Until we come to you guys, present it. Then it goes to the lawyers, maybe we don't have to present it to you guys officially, it just.
I think it would be good if the land use committee could present, say, we believe we're done with the exception of legal review. These are the steps we've been through, what we've done to date. And then, ceremonial handing it off, and then for the board to say whatever they want to say, but thank you for your work. We'll send this to council for review. And then if there's something major or minor, we'll get back to you. Or if it's perfect, woohoo.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna need the extension.
Yes.
And I think David looked at the calendar. If you guys approve that tonight. I think you said it falls 4 or 5 days short of the general election.
Yeah.
So there probably is gonna be a need for another.
Yep.
Extension in October. Just to get us to the finish line, if we were to aim to have something ready for. The general election, rather than having to do a special town meeting.
Yep.
If you guys wanna call a special town meeting. Call a special town meeting, but.
But definitely agree with you that the most important thing is to extend that moratorium, so that you can continue your work, for sure.
And I think, I think most people were looking, not wanting to do a public hearing in the middle of the summer, so. I'm assuming you guys set that date. So.
Yeah, the change to the land use ordinance actually will require a public hearing by the planning board. So we probably
Oh,
might,
that's right,
we
yeah.
might want to have a meeting. Or when we get around to scheduling that, of the planning board with land use committee support, since you all were intimately involved in the drafting of the rewriting. And they may not be as in tune with some of the changes and the rationale behind it as you might be. The current moratorium, I believe I put it in, it goes through May.
Yeah.
So you'll actually be
So
looking to,
April.
you'll have to post a notice of having another hearing in April to extend it again. But it's good to have this update so you know that progress is being made, because that's one of the hurdles that has to continue.
Any questions for Andy?
Yeah, I just like to say we have a great committee. It really is composed of people with knowledge of a lot of different parts of comp plan. Past planning board members, people who are involved in the writing of different things, and active, people that are on the appeals board and planning board. So I mean, we have a great committee, and And an unofficial poll is that they would like to continue doing that work. So the town is looking at extending the land use committee. Everybody right now seems to be on board to keep going with it.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you so much for,
Thank you.
and to your committee for all of their hard work. And for the update. Moving along, we have consideration of, our lawn care, contract award. David, do you want to speak to this briefly?
Sure, we went out to bid for lawn care and landscaping services. For the upcoming spring, summer, fall season. Hopefully it'll show up eventually. You have a bid summary in your packet. The low responsive and responsible bidder, who also happens to be the low price, is Knights Property Management of Northport. They did the work this past summer. Which our public facilities director thought worked out well, except for a few little glitches with the weather, but since we can't control that, we're subject to it. And so we're recommending Knights Property Management. Work.
It's interesting that they were low bidder again this year, and that they did what I feel was such a great job for us last year. And they took on more than they expected. And got new equipment to start the year with. I mean, and you know, looking at these bids, I mean, they're all over the place. That's something.
Yeah.
It's so, I think it's helpful for somebody after they've done it, they've got an inside track, so to speak. I mean, they don't get any preferential treatment from us, but they know how long it takes.
Yeah.
That it wasn't like, oh my God,
Right.
what did we get into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my opinion.
The one area that seems way different is just on the athletic fields, that probably comes from the experience of doing it this past winter. The athletic fields, I mean, I wasn't in there myself, but felt they were done really well.
I kept an eye on that because I know I've been pretty vocal over the last 5 years. And I think getting the water off the Little League field, or doing the best we could there. And, you know, if you can stay on it and continue to roll it every once in a while or whatever, it always looks good. And it did. I was impressed with it.
Yeah, well, and I'm in favor of building on experience too.
Yeah.
Well, to that end, does someone want to make a motion?
I move that the board award the 3-year contract for mowing, trimming, and lawn care maintenance project to Knights Property Management for the unit prices stated in their bid, with the first year costs totaling $16,500.
So,
Moved and seconded, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And moving on to consideration of a paving contract award. David, you want to speak to this?
Sure, so we put out a paving and culvert work contract. We had 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bidders. Unfortunately, the 2 lowest price wise, we would consider non-responsive bids because they either couldn't meet our deadline or didn't provide the necessary insurances. So we moved up to we moved from the low bid to the next bid to the 3rd bid, and are recommending FC Works and Son from Jackson.
Questions for David on that? Seems straightforward. Does someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board award contract, the 2025 paving to FC Works and Sons, Inc. of Jackson, Maine, set forth in their bid.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And you have next up, the proposed correspondence that came as a result of our joint workshop with the Public Facilities Director and the Harbor Committee. If this draft looks acceptable to everyone, and I believe it to be representative of our concerns and recommendations. I'll entertain a motion. Yeah.
I did have one question slash clarification.
Sure.
Thing. Page 2 of the letter. The first full paragraph on page 2 about the wave screen. Where it currently says if this wave screen needs to be built as currently laid out and cannot be constructed between the dolphins. As a minimum, it needs to be constructed as close to the dolphins as physically possible.
Mhm.
I mean, I completely agree with that, but I was wondering if we shouldn't go farther. I'm not sure exactly what the wording would be, but to say that in our view, that idea should be specified as a requirement in any relevant bid proposals, like, because people had mentioned in the workshop that the contractors will, exercise leeway. And so us saying as close as physically possible to the management isn't necessarily also saying, and when you put this out to bid, make sure that you got this as a requirement in the bid. That's all.
I'm not sure how we would say that.
Yeah.
If it-
I get it, and I agree.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure how we would say that.
Yeah, same, I feel like I understand your sentiment. How, I guess. Maybe it's overly optimistic, but I hope that in saying that, it will prompt. Another conversation and perhaps a site visit as we invited them to come and see it and then. Expand on that concept without,
I agree 100% with what you're suggesting, but if we did that, we'd also have to do the same thing with like, how many
Right.
feet do we want them to move the e-house? How many-
Yeah.
Right.
So I had a couple notes on that same vein. I was like, okay, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Right, hopefully we'll get an indication of whether or not they're open
Right.
to these amendments, and then we could, and then I
think
again,
it's the next conversation.
yeah, maybe being overly optimistic, but the response would be, could you be more specific? Could you give us a scope? Is there a minimum or maximum amount of feet?
Yeah.
Because it's really, it does apply to almost all of the elements that we've
Right.
called out.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's an
great
an
point.
excellent point for sure, but I think we just get lost in the argument. Yeah, yeah. Anything else anyone wants to fine tune?
I thought the letter was very well written.
Yeah.
Very
As far as-
comprehensive, yeah.
Yes. And
Yep.
the drawings as well.
Yep. All right, excellent. Well, would someone care to make a motion?
I move the board approve and sign the February 24th, 2025 letter to Mackenzie Kersberg regarding the ferry terminal 60% complete plans and the town's concerns regarding the project as currently.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much.
Will that be copied to the town of Osborne?
We've indicated that on the draft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Will we be signing it tonight? Since
I
there
have
are no
it.
changes? Okay.
Good.
And at this point, I think we can transition to our budget packets. And for agenda item number 11, we welcome public input on our municipal budget. Seeing zero public here to comment or ask questions, we're going to move along to agenda item number 12, which is our operations of the budget.
I'm just getting out notes.
Yep,
Good.
and everyone has included the updated provider agency. Yep, in, and then we have the responses. To the questions that we asked. Is anyone opposed to just going through the budget one section at a time? And is anyone on the board at a point where they feel like they're ready to make a final recommendation tonight? Or do we want to go through it, make our recommendations, let the chips or the dollar signs fall where they will, and then at our March 10th meeting, we'll make department by department our final recommendations?
Could you say that again?
I just wanted, like, if anybody's feeling really strongly about a final number. Okay, great. Excellent. So we will proceed through each section and extra pages in here. Okay, so we are on page 4 for administration and finance. Changes? Yes.
I had several. It seemed to me when we were going through this that out of an abundance of caution, we are overstating a lot of individual budget line items because we don't want to end up expending more than what was budgeted. But we end up with a lot of relatively small lines that kind of add up. And very few times do we actually go over what was budgeted. I think I could count on one hand how many individual lines I found in here. So I was looking through and thinking like advertising, auditing, liens and discharges, postage, even professional development. I had like 1,000 here, 500 here. It just seemed like they could be brought more in line with what the actual 2024 and 2023 totals were. And so, yeah, so I mean, I kind of came up with about 6,500 in total to reduce.
You have
offset by-
specific amounts for each line?
I did, yeah. I had 1,000 for advertising.
Well, first, not to interrupt you, but what's the board's feeling on taking that approach?
I didn't pick apart admin and finance much. I was doing some comparisons from year over year over year over year as far as how close we were to budget, and there are some overall lines throughout, but admin and finance isn't one where I personally found much of to address.
Yeah, I am of a mind to defer to the administrator. He's administrating much of this. He's day to day, he sees what it costs. He wants to make sure that he has a sufficient amount of money to cover those needs. So, like I said, I'm going to defer to his judgment.
I think he's being overly cautious because
Perhaps.
there are weird,
No, I hear you.
you know. And when you consider how much in total the budget had increased, I thought it made sense that this was a good year to take a little closer look and say, well, we could tighten up here and here and here with no inordinate exposure adversely for us, and hopefully keep the town portion of our taxes, you know, of our overall budget.
All right, so
More in-
specifically,
So-
what line are you?
Well, like I looked at advertising. It's being level funded, but we're spending a lot less than that. I can pull out fiscal 23. I didn't write the number down from what the fiscal 23 budget was, but
I guess I will say yes, but to push back, for example, we have this moratorium ordinance coming up. We have the comprehensive plan review. We have a number of things happening within town, a lot of additional meetings, all of which will require additional advertising funds, which I I don't want to put words in your mouth, David, but in my experience, having those funds in there allows, say, an unusually overactive year where there's lots of public hearings that require notice and posting and all of those kinds of things to be covered that we haven't necessarily had in the last couple of years.
But the comp plan isn't gonna be coming up this year, is it? I thought that this year seemed pretty much
Well,
similar to last year.
between July 1 and July 1,
Okay.
there's certainly going to be, depending on proposals and plans, there's going to be public meetings.
Is that part of what the consultant is gonna be? hoping to
Yeah,
run? So
yeah,
it's part of that,
yeah, all of which require
okay. So I could be persuaded on the advertising. Do you also envision that that includes the need to mail things? Because postage is another line that has been hanging out under 5,000, and we've been budgeting 6,000 for several years. And it seemed like $1,000 could come out of that line without a lot of problem.
Well, I would agree with you, except, I mean, I'm familiar with how postage rates rise. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do go up again. What do you do then? If you're pretty much maxed out at 5 and the rates go up, as they did last year, what do we do?
Yeah, I guess I need to echo, I
Okay.
echo Steve in that, I don't know David or anyone in the town office to be or I guess being incautious with the amount of money that's being asked to administrate things in the town office.
I think a lot of these come down to, for example, in 2021, we spent 6,000 in postage. We actually spent 6,000
Right.
in postage, which is why because we had an overage
Right,
in 21, so we bumped it to 6. We've been hovering a little under.
right,
Whatever came up that year that bumped us way up
right.
could happen again in a heartbeat.
So. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're looking so closely at it, but for me, this comes down to, both to Steve's point, sort of a historic viewpoint of the fluctuations that can happen. That haven't necessarily happened in the last couple of years, but I tend to, believe the town office staff when these are the numbers that they're asking.
Yeah, for example, advertising, if I look at, I've got several years worth of books here and it's 2,200, 2,500, 2,400. So we were pretty close to that 26 in multiple years in a row in actuals.
And, needing to. I'm not a fan of padding the budget. This doesn't feel like padding the budget to me. This feels like being constructively cautious.
Okay.
Giving us a buffer.
So the next question then that we have is the raise for our town administrator.
Yes. So we had talked, the cost of living that we are adopting is 2.5.
Yes.
So I think we talked about adding 0.5%.
Correct.
To bring that to 3%. That concurrence?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else under administration and finance?
The only question I had for David is in regards to computer type of services. things that we think we're gonna be getting quotes from Gusco on. Do you feel there's something in here to cover some of that?
You're talking about computer support, that line?
Yeah, there's some
computer purchases
recommendations
are-
coming
Mhm.
as far as,
I think we'll take care of some of that in the current year.
okay,
I do not have a complete grasp of FY 26 computer wise. Computer tech support services. So it's,
Do you think that's gonna be enough?
I think we'll make it enough.
I mean,
yeah, I
if the-
think
if the numbers-
between the fact that we're low this year
Yeah.
and next year, we'll probably have enough for the things that Gus is talking about.
Okay.
So this will get us started
Yeah,
under the
Okay.
new.
I wasn't even thinking of last year, the
Okay.
money we haven't spent yet this year, so yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right, so moving on from administration and finance with that change to town administrator, correct?
The other issue that was brought up during budget presentations was whether or not it wanted the town to invest in
Laptops. for
laptops
the-
or tablets or anything in the coming year. Because there is no money in there for that, and I see three of you have them open right now.
I'd rather use my own than have a second piece of equipment.
I'm not
personally.
advocating, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
Well, at the expense of, and I have this at home, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it, I had it broken down a rough figure as to how much it would save yearly. It's a fair amount.
You mean save as far as we wouldn't have all this paper?
Yeah, correct.
Well,
And it would also cut down, excuse me, on the hours.
It would
That's
cut
half
down
his
on
work.
the preparation.
Yeah, sure.
All of that, and I'm sorry, I didn't bring that.
would-
And I can do it either way, and it would be it'd be a learning curve for me to have an iPad sitting here in front of me. But if you also had an iPad, you take notes, you highlight things, you do a lot more than just read from an iPad.
mhm.
And we have advanced our technology, or at least that's what we are doing for the town office. And, we have our .gov, email addresses now, which I'm not using. I don't know if everybody else is using it.
I tried and failed.
But we spent money on stuff like that.
Mhm.
I think
Well, is this something that, maybe you wanna put together a more comprehensive
I can.
case for
Okay.
the 10th?
Yep.
And we can consider it and or consider it really great groundwork for next year to implement. 'Cause We
Absolutely.
could also make the argument that onboarding Gusco, we can streamline the two things
Mhm.
together potentially.
Not that I want to carry around another electronic device,
Yes, you do.
but I hate to tell you how many between the paperwork that we get every meeting and
Mhm.
the paperwork that I get to represent the town committee solid waste. I get a fair amount of paper at my house.
Yeah, yep,
And it's expensive, and the trickle down effect is the towns pay for it.
yep.
So I'm just getting it out there.
All right, so visit that.
Yeah, and I promise I'll bring something for our next sit down.
Sounds good.
Will we be getting a revised sheet with?
Yeah,
the
my-
raise and the FICA and.
Yeah, my
everything
hope, dream and
through?
aspiration would be after you make any tweaks or major changes tonight would be to incorporate those and the few typos that I found, changes into a new draft that would be dated the 20, whatever today is, 24.
Yeah.
So that you would have that at your next meeting, so you could see where we stood.
Yep,
Set.
great. There are no objections. Moving along to page 6, protection, animal control. Anything there? No? Okay, moving along to page 7, protection fire department. We did have the recognition that there needs to be an additional or request for an additional $1,700 specifically under equipment purchases.
Maintenance,
Maintenance.
Oh, maintenance.
equipment maintenance.
Maintenance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the SCBA's, right?
Yeah,
Firefighting.
for the, yeah, we're ready to move where the foam is accounted for.
Yeah,
And the SCBA was for the cylinder testing,
right.
$1,700 was what the chief had requested during the meeting to add.
That puts him at 33,200.
Equipment maintenance. No, it would, the line below that, Karen would. Am I looking at the? right
Oh,
one?
I'm sorry.
It would go up to
Just
80
Oh, I see. I added it
8,700.
already. So it gets it up to 8,700.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on fire department?
Well. So the chief has also asked for money. More for himself. And more for. Deputy chief and assistant chief, and I don't want to critique this too hard, because I think we're lucky. To get as many volunteers or as many participants, we'll call it, for our fire department. I just want to make sure that everybody is satisfied with. What the chief is doing. We've asked him to do a lot, and we're going to continue to ask him to do more. Because we're being faced with a situation where he's going to have to participate more. When it comes to first responder, and he's gonna have to have some support for that too. In his support staff. So I wonder. Maybe not this year, but I wonder if we're gonna have to have
We're gonna have to have that conversation.
have a conversation. We got a lot of changes coming.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't wanna say. It's gonna be catastrophic for all the surrounding towns around here. Regardless of what they do, so I just wanna get it out there, we need to be thinking about. What he's getting now, what we're doing in the future, is this enough? Does
Yeah.
he even have enough time to do? He's,
We should probably plan on, having another constructive sit down. Kind of thing. We have that specific conversation. In preparation for. Fleshing out. What, if any, additional tasks, duties, job descriptions.
Yeah.
and funds
and to
associated.
go along with that, someone to. Start the conversation of. How much do we wanna do out of our own. Fire department down there, and how much can we do without
Mhm.
spending a lot of money to retrofit?
Mhm.
Other things to go on down there,
Mhm.
without coming right out and saying a lot of stuff, it's just, I
Mhm.
think that's a conversation. It needs to be started,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it will directly affect our budget process. In the near future.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Anything else?
I feel like we could save some on the truck fuel, but I don't
Yeah,
think there's.
I know.
Enthusiasm for.
I know I know the chief himself called that out. But then again, it's one of those things that we have spent that kind of money. And so, reduce it to what?
Well, I was just thinking, taking 1,000 off. Still be. Kind of reasonable looking at the last couple of years, but.
I personally, in this area, don't have an issue, because I feel we're falling behind on funding the fire trucks. And this money rolls, anything that's not spent here rolls into that fund, which we're gonna find ourselves behind on in a few years.
But I'd personally rather that we upped what we were putting in that line farther down in the budget in the capital improvement plan for the fire truck as opposed to, it kind of makes it a little more official, especially
It's clean.
for the average taxpayer who's looking at it.
Well, that is true.
Sees-
Okay. So what you want to make a reduction of $1,000? Is that your
I was thinking-
suggestion?
Yeah.
What's the rest of the board's thoughts there?
Well, I remember the chief saying, talking at this point and saying, yeah, but what happens if we gotta make a run and we don't have the cash? Or we
We're
don't
gonna-
have the money in the budget?
We're gonna fill the truck.
Well, of course, you're gonna fill the truck, and that's exactly what he
And
said.
we'll figure it out.
And that's what he said.
That's what we would do. We'll figure, yeah,
Oh, I know the truck's gonna
Yeah.
run, regardless of what number is in.
yeah.
It's, my personal opinion is it's public safety and we cannot second guess it. And I've got to put some stock in our fire chief. And being a past member of the Lincolnville Fire Department, you never know how much you're going to use. I think
Right.
that's his best guess. And I'm going to go with it. And I'm not going to reduce, I'm not going to recommend to reduce something like that.
Anyone else interested in the reduction right now?
I'd rather go with the chief's numbers.
Anything else there under the fire department? Okay, let's move along to protection other. As David pointed out, do you want to speak to that conversation where we can reduce ambulance service by, am I correct, $52,835?
Correct. We didn't report about this in administrative report, but here it is. We've been having ongoing conversations with Northeast about how, with the loss of 25% of the calls, roughly, what we can do to minimize that impact without impacting services. We're looking at adjusting some scheduling where we at times had 3 on, we may have 2 and whatnot, and where we stand, the 3 communities stand today is obviously a reduction of quite a lot of money when it comes to the 3 towns, our share being 52,835. And we're still exploring some other possibilities for lower cost without reduction in quality of service.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Anything else there under protection other?
What I was thinking about was legal, we never can identify what we're gonna spend, but this is one where we've never been to the number we were budgeting.
Ooh, there was,
Maybe not in the
yeah.
4 or 5 years I'm looking
In the
at.
last 10 years, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, well, specifically 8 years ago when David had his. Was that 8 years ago?
It was 2016.
There's a combination of the solar PPA happening and then David's brain malfunctioning. That
We're not gonna have that happen
We-
again.
we relied really, I mean, we went over that. But to your point, Steve, it's,
Yeah.
what are the chances?
We've got 4 years where we've been at least 12 grand or more or less.
All right, what, do you want to make a,
I would take 5 grand off.
okay?
I
What's,
mean, I like taking bigger numbers than just like 500 or 1,000 here and there, but yeah, 5 grand I think would be. Still leaves us a cushion over what we've typically spent, and then if we have the oh my moment.
Then we have
the
that
ways to address
conversation.
that.
board's thoughts there?
You know me, I'd be more comfortable with 10, but I'll stick with.
I like it. But yeah, within the 10-year back look, that's the occurrence where
Yeah.
I think that number really comes from. Is the board willing to, Robin says 10. What's the thoughts? 5,000, 10,000?
Well, it was 14,000 last year. We've spent 9 this year. What was it 2 years ago?
19,000,
Yeah.
Yeah,
19,000.
And again, I will say.
Yeah.
Moratorium ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
Comprehend, like those things are just projecting, so I'm not opposed to the concept of reducing it by 5. I'm
I couldn't
less
go 10.
comfortable with 10.
okay.
So an additional decrease of 5 for specifically legal services, correct?
Yes.
There's a general concurrence of that?
Yeah, sure.
What was the change to ambulance service?
52,835.
Yep.
Decrease.
Yep.
Anything else?
Knox dispatch,
I was- Yeah,
is it even a thing for us anymore?
It should say Walden.
They're dispatching the ambulance.
Do they dispatch?
That's why there's a reduction, because we moved from a fire back to Waldo.
Yeah.
Past year,
Yeah.
but
So
they
they're
dispatch ambulance.
and then I just saw that Rockland City Council gave them another year. To,
Oh, that long?
was it, or was it?
No, it's like
I think it's
45 days.
Yeah, 45
45 days, and then it looks like the town of Rockland is gonna take it.
Yeah.
But regardless, ambulance services, like that's something that we still have to subscribe to.
But that's required by.
Here's your
Northeast.
bill.
Or
What's that?
Well, somebody has to be the public safety answering point or whatever PSAP stands
PSAP,
for. And then transfer that to be dispatched by somebody. And because Northeast was based in Rockport, dispatching for 3 communities in Knox County.
Yeah.
And we got sucked into that. Now, I don't know what impact if Camden and or Hope decide to depart from Knox County as well and go in some sort of partnership with Rockland, whether we get sucked into that, we're gonna need money to pay for it
okay,
Yeah,
regardless.
yeah.
so
it's-
we have to be wherever.
That's
Common.
that's my
Reality.
understanding.
Okay.
All right, anything else there on page 9? Okay, moving along, page 10, town office building, anything there?
The landscaping, we have an actual bid now.
Yes, the
It
fun
was-
part about that is that it is parsed out over.
True, but it was broken out. It was 2,000 for the town office piece of it. Not sure if I took.
Got it somewhere.
So number 7, this belongs there.
Yep.
And number 8, the town office was 2,000.
Yep.
Nights, and we budgeted 3,100. So I was
Mhm.
thinking we could bring that down to 2,000.
We need a little bit more than the 2,000 because
It's not just the,
it's not. Because half this year will be in this budget year, and then they're gonna get an increase for the next fiscal year, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Mhm.
This bid, the lawn care bid or landscaping bid goes from today through the end of, let's say, November. And then they're going, and then,
And then,
And
so
then there'll be-
half,
There'll be a
Right.
contractual increase.
well, it was a 3-year contract,
Right.
right?
yeah, but there's a,
There's an
But
But
annual,
there's not.
there's an
increase-
annual escalator.
Right,
but it's not 50%. You're right there.
but do we know what the escalator is? Can't,
Yeah, the escalator will be determined in October.
oh, so we don't know it.
We don't have a fixed number, but it's not 50%. if you want to take something from this, we'd be covered.
Seems like maybe leaving that alone makes more sense, just the way that it breaks down. Anything else? Seeing nothing, let's move along. Page 11, contingency. Robin?
I wasn't touching it, even though.
Okay, no
But
recommendations
isn't
there.
that what maybe we should be, I mean,
You mean,
what's contingency for if it isn't for, oh, we budgeted this much for something, but this other circumstance happened and
Mhm.
the whole budget, so
Mhm,
contingencies.
mhm, mhm.
Or for the unforeseen that isn't budgeted anywhere. And that, to me, that's more its intended purpose is to avoid a special town meeting, for a quote unquote minor expense.
A culvert washes out
Or we have a, pandemic and we spend $9,044,
PPA, right?
on screens and
Yeah.
I,
We can,
and that's been.
we can always revisit it again on the 10th if someone develops a really strong feeling between now and then.
I had left it alone.
Sound good? Okay, let's move along to page 12, code enforcement.
I did.
Anything there?
I'm good there.
Okay, page 13, assessing. Okay, page 14, highways, public works, highways and bridges.
Yeah,
All right. What are you seeing, Steve?
I had two as potentials. One was miscellaneous storm expenses. I know we end up with crazy stuff, but we also have contingency and we have more often than not, we get the money back from FEMA or whatever. And historically, we haven't gotten hit. I had $5,000 instead of $10,000.
You want to reduce it by 5?
That was my suggestion, or is my suggestion.
Okay, thoughts from the board?
I can see that, but at the same time, FEMA funds may not be forthcoming in the future. I like it, so.
But if we have contingency.
Right.
I'm good with Steve's suggestion. I had also looked at.
Well,
a couple of other lines.
let's get a consensus on miscellaneous / storm expenses. Is there a majority of the board that's willing to? Steve, Robin, anyone else? Feeling like we could drop it to 5? 5, 5, 2, 5.
I don't have a lot of confidence in FEMA. You know what I mean?
Right, but then, so we've got contingency, which we haven't come close to touching in quite some time.
Yep.
I really can go either way.
I'm just not, I just don't want to gamble with the nature right now. Storms are storms and they hit hard.
We've got so many other areas that are going up. I'm just trying to find.
No, I totally
Yeah.
get that, yeah.
It's gotta be something palatable to
Yeah,
the townspeople and there's a lot of folks that are struggling, so.
yeah, I'm not opposed to the, let me think on it. Steve.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable recommendation.
Well, do we have? Do we have enough contingency so we could just take the 10 right out of there? No worry about it?
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I'd still want to leave something in there to have the ability for us to respond immediately to say,
Yep.
bunch of trees come down, or road washes out. Or the park bench is washed into the ocean again, or the porta potties go floating down Route 1. Yeah, I want to mull that one over if that's all right, and we can revisit it on the 10th.
Yep.
All right,
Next
Rob,
one,
yes, oh, sorry, yes, Steve.
next one I had was sand and salt building maintenance.
Mhm.
I was gonna drop that to 2,500. Again, looking out through the years, we don't get there.
He's dropping it even more than what my suggestion was, so go Steve.
I think Let me speak up and say, I think we upped that this year because we were looking at the
Yeah.
red building over here, doing something to it to reduce the